It was a quiet day on Earth when the first signal arrived, a strange signal from deep space. At first, it was dismissed as a mistake, a glitch in the system. The world was focused on its daily activities. People went about their business, unaware of the doom lurking just beyond the stars. But soon, the message was confirmed. It wasn't a mistake. It was real, and it was aimed directly at Earth. The message was simple, cold, and direct: surrender. You will never survive what comes next. No signature. No name. Just a chilling warning from the unknown. The world's governments scrambled to decode the message, to understand its meaning. Was it a prank? Was it some kind of threat from another nation? Perhaps a cyber attack? But no. It was something far more sinister. Within hours, every major country on Earth had been alerted. Military forces were put on high alert. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock, trying to trace the source of the message, but the signal was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It wasn't from a known satellite, a distant planet, or even a space station. It was something new, something unknown, something terrifying. A week passed before the skies began to change. At first, it was subtle, a slight shift in the stars, an odd formation of lights in the sky. But then, as the days wore on, the signs grew clearer. The ships arrived. Hundreds of them. Thousands. A vast fleet, larger than anything Earth had ever seen. The ships hung in the sky like dark clouds, their shapes unfamiliar, their technology far beyond anything humanity had imagined. The world went silent in shock. There were no warnings, no attempts at communication, no gestures of peace. The ships simply appeared, hanging in the heavens like a grim promise of things to come. It was as if the universe itself had decided to deliver humanity's fate in one fell swoop. Panic swept across the globe. People feared the worst. Some believed it was an invasion. Others feared it was an execution, a final judgment passed on Earth by some unknown cosmic force. Governments scrambled to respond, sending messages of peace and negotiation, but the ships offered no reply. There was no answer, only silence. Military leaders debated their next move, but there was no real strategy. Earth's weapons were primitive compared to the ships above them. The most advanced technologies humanity had developed would be nothing more than a spark in the dark when faced with such an overwhelming force. What could they do? How could they possibly fight back? Then, in the midst of the chaos, a single ship detached itself from the fleet. It descended slowly, hovering just above the ground in the middle of a vast desert. As it landed, the world's leaders waited in tense silence, watching, waiting for something to happen. A hatch opened on the side of the ship, and from it emerged a figure tall, slender, and alien. The being was dressed in silver armor that shimmered in the harsh sunlight, its face hidden behind a sleek, reflective visor. It moved with an eerie grace, its every step deliberate and confident. The world's leaders gathered their courage and sent their most powerful ambassadors to meet the alien. What followed was a tense exchange, one that would change the course of history forever. The alien spoke in a language humanity could not understand, but its voice carried a tone that transcended words. It wasn't an invitation to talk. It wasn't an offer of peace. It was a command. And yet, there was something else, a coldness, a sense of superiority that made the air itself feel heavy. The humans tried to speak, to explain their peaceful intentions, but the alien dismissed them with a single gesture, as if they were little more than insects beneath its gaze. And then it spoke again. But this time, the words were clear. This is your final warning. You will not survive what is coming next. The message was broadcast across the world, amplified by every available communication channel. It echoed through the airwaves, filling homes, radios, and televisions with its cold, emotionless tone. The entire planet went still as the truth of the message sank in. This was not a negotiation. This was not an offer for peace. This was a declaration. Earth was about to face something far beyond its comprehension. The alien's words were not a mere threat. They were a promise, one that Earth could not escape. The tribunal had come, and it was not here for peace. The world's leaders tried to respond, but they were silenced by the sheer weight of the alien presence. What could they say? What could they do? The ships in the sky loomed large, their weapons unknown, their technology far superior. Earth's military could never hope to fight back. The alien, and whatever force lay behind it, were beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. As the days passed, the world waited. The alien ships remained in place, silent and unmoving, while the people of Earth tried to comprehend what was happening. There were no attacks, no explosions, but the tension in the air was thick. It was as though something invisible was closing in around them, something inevitable and inescapable. It was a waiting game, and humanity was losing. And yet, even in the face of such overwhelming odds, something remarkable began to stir among Earth's population. It started with small acts, simple defiance in the face of fear. A protest in a quiet corner of the world. A rebellious act of resistance. A person standing tall against the unknown, refusing to bow down. It was the beginning of something. Humanity, as fragile and small as it might seem, was not going to surrender without a fight. The governments of Earth began to organize in secret, pooling their knowledge and resources. They had no choice but to find a way to survive, to find a way to fight back against the unimaginable force that had appeared in the sky. It was not a question of if they would resist, but how. The world's scientists and engineers began working around the clock, developing new technologies, searching for weaknesses in the alien ships, hoping for a way to turn the tide. As the days turned into weeks, the question remained, what did the Tribunal want? Why had they come to Earth? And most importantly, what did the warning mean? Despite the fear that gripped the hearts of billions, one thing became clear: humanity's survival depended on their ability to come together, to fight not just for Earth, but for their future among the stars. The stakes were higher than ever before. The Tribunal had made it clear they would not be merciful. But humanity had something the Tribunal did not understand: resolve. And that could prove to be the most dangerous weapon of all. Days turned into weeks, and the alien fleet remained suspended in the skies above Earth, unmoving, silent, and waiting. The people of Earth were on edge, every moment feeling like the calm before a storm. Despite the tension, the aliens made no move to attack. Instead, they continued to hover, as though they were observing, studying the planet below. Governments scrambled to understand what was happening, searching for answers to questions they had no way of answering. Why had they come? What did they want? And why hadn't they attacked yet? It wasn't until the third week of the alien presence that something unexpected happened. A small group of scientists, working together in secret, uncovered something strange buried deep within Earth's history, a pattern, a hidden secret that might offer humanity a chance to survive. It all started with a single book, an ancient text long thought to be nothing more than a myth. The book, written in an ancient language, had been passed down for generations among scholars, yet no one had ever been able to decipher it. Its pages were filled with symbols, strange characters that seemed to resist all efforts at translation. But now, in the face of the alien threat, the book had become a source of hope. Dr. Evelyn Rose, one of the leading researchers on ancient Earth cultures, had spent years studying the book without any clear breakthrough. But as she pored over the text once more, she saw something that sent a chill down her spine. Hidden among the symbols were references to a coming darkness and a warning about beings from the stars, beings who would come not to destroy, but to judge. The text spoke of an ancient race that had once inhabited Earth, a race so advanced that their technology was indistinguishable from magic. These beings, known as the Architects, had left behind cryptic clues scattered across the globe, clues that had been lost to time. The more Dr. Rose studied the symbols, the more it became clear. The Architects had known of the Tribunal, had known that such a force would one day come to Earth. The message was not just a warning, it was a map to hidden knowledge and possibly hidden power. The secrets of the Architects were buried in plain sight, hidden within the very fabric of Earth's history. The discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. A secret, ancient race, buried beneath layers of time, had known about the Tribunal and had left clues that could help humanity survive. But what was the true nature of the Architects' power? And could the humans of Earth find it before it was too late? Dr. Rose wasn't alone in her pursuit of the truth. Other researchers around the world, inspired by her findings, began to dig deeper into their own histories. Ancient temples, forgotten ruins, and long-lost cities were uncovered, each one holding secrets that seemed to confirm the existence of the architects. Across the globe, teams of archaeologists and historians worked tirelessly to piece together backslash. As more and more of the ancient text was deciphered, a disturbing pattern emerged. The architects had once been protectors of Earth, but they had also been warriors. Their advanced technology had allowed them to defeat enemies beyond imagination. But there was a warning hidden within their words: the judgment will come again, and only those who understand the path will survive. This cryptic message suggested that the Tribunal was not the first race to come to Earth with the intention of judgment. The architects had faced similar forces in their time, and it was possible they had left behind a legacy meant to prepare Earth's inhabitants for the same fate. The more they discovered, the more the scientists realized that humanity had been unknowingly preparing for this moment for centuries. The tribunals, the alien ships in the sky, the ancient warnings, all of it was part of a grand design, a plan set into motion long before humanity had even begun to understand its place in the universe. The architects had left behind not just technology, but the very knowledge needed to face the tribunal. But that knowledge was buried, hidden in ways that humans had never imagined. For the first time in history, the world's governments came together in a way that hadn't been seen since the early years of the planet. A secret alliance was formed between the greatest minds in science, history, and military strategy. They would work together, combining their knowledge to unlock the hidden potential of Earth's ancient past. But time was running out. Every day, the Tribunal's fleet grew larger in the sky, casting a shadow over the Earth that seemed to grow darker with every passing hour. One fateful night, Dr. Rose received a breakthrough. She had discovered a hidden pattern in the ruins of an ancient temple deep in the Amazon rainforest. The temple, a sprawling structure with intricate carvings, had been thought to be a simple religious site. But it was far more than that. The carvings told a story of the architect's battle against a force from the stars, force after force, each one stronger than the last. The last part of the story was the most chilling, a symbol, one that matched the strange insignia seen on the alien ships above Earth. The Tribunal was part of a long line of invaders, each one attempting to conquer the galaxy, each one facing the architects in battle. The more Dr. Rose and her team pieced together the story, the clearer it became that the architects had created something hidden beneath the Earth that could change everything. A weapon? A tool of defense? It was impossible to say for sure, but one thing was certain: humanity was not facing the unknown for the first time. Earth had once been a battleground, a place where ancient wars had shaped the destiny of the galaxy. And now, humanity was caught in the middle of a cosmic conflict that it had no part in creating. But the most disturbing discovery was still to come. The architects had left behind not just a map, but a test. To find the secret, humanity would need to prove itself worthy. The message was clear: to survive the Tribunal, Earth would need more than just knowledge. It would need the courage to face what was hidden in plain sight. As the clock ticked down, the world held its breath. The Tribunal's ships remained in the sky, waiting, watching. And in the shadows, humanity's only hope lay buried beneath the ruins of its own history. Would Earth find the secret before it was too late, or would the Tribunal's judgment come to pass? The answer was hidden, and the race to uncover it had only just begun. The silence was almost unbearable as the ships hovered above Earth, a constant reminder of the looming threat that seemed to grow larger by the day. For weeks, humanity had been on edge, waiting for the inevitable clash, knowing that their survival was at the mercy of forces beyond their understanding. The Tribunal's fleet, an imposing armada of ships unlike anything seen before, filled the skies with a presence that cast an overwhelming shadow over the planet. Every moment that passed seemed like the calm before a storm, but no one knew when the storm would break. In the midst of the global tension, nations held emergency meetings, military forces readied themselves for a confrontation, and civilians could do little more than look up at the sky, wondering what would come next. The fear was palpable, a weight that hung over the world like an unseen cloud. The mystery of the alien ships only added to the anxiety as their purpose remained unclear. Were they here to conquer, to judge, or something else entirely? Every theory and hypothesis was just speculation, and each day of waiting felt like a waste of precious time. Then, without warning, the stillness was shattered. At first, it was barely noticeable, just a slight shimmer in the atmosphere, a disturbance in the air, like the hum of an electrical charge. But it didn't take long for the world to realize that something was happening. The first blow came swiftly and without mercy. The sky above New York City, one of the busiest places on Earth, suddenly cracked open with a flash of light. The ground trembled as an enormous beam of energy descended from the largest ship in the Tribunal's fleet. The impact was cataclysmic, shaking the city to its core and sending a shockwave that could be felt miles away. Buildings crumbled in an instant, turning to dust as if they had never existed. The iconic skyline, a symbol of human achievement, was obliterated in the blink of an eye. People screamed in terror as chaos erupted. The beam was like nothing humanity had ever seen. It wasn't a conventional weapon, it was an energy pulse, a raw force that seemed to bypass all defenses. The first wave of destruction had begun, and it was nothing short of devastating. The once thriving metropolis was reduced to rubble, a haunting reminder of the destructive power of the Tribunal. The world watched in horror as the unimaginable unfolded before their eyes. In the moments that followed, governments scrambled to respond, but there was little they could do. The alien fleet, unmoving in the sky, made no effort to engage in battle. The first strike had been delivered without a declaration of war, without warning, and without reason. It was as if they were testing humanity, gauging its response, or perhaps delivering a message. No one could be sure, but one thing was clear: the world was no longer the same. The balance of power had shifted in an instant. Across the globe, people reacted with a mixture of fear, anger, and disbelief. For those who had been following the recent discoveries of the architects and the ancient warnings, the first blow was a confirmation of their worst fears. The Tribunal was not here to negotiate, they had come to judge, and humanity was the target. Governments mobilized their forces, but what could they do against an enemy that had already demonstrated such overwhelming power? The military might of Earth, impressive as it was, seemed insignificant in the face of the Tribunal's advanced technology. Dr. Evelyn Rose, one of the key scientists working to unravel the secrets of the architects, was in the midst of her research when the news broke. Her heart sank as she watched the destruction unfold on her screen. It wasn't just the devastation of New York that disturbed her. It was the realization that the secret she had been searching for might be humanity's only hope. But now, with the Tribunal's first strike, that hope seemed far away, as though it had been snatched from them in an instant. Her team, scattered across the globe, had made significant progress in decoding the ancient texts, but there was still so much they didn't understand. The clock was ticking, and the first blow had sent a chilling message: time was running out. They had to find the hidden power, the forgotten technology that the architects had left behind, and they had to do it fast. But what if the secret they sought was not enough to stop the Tribunal? What if the power they were searching for was no match for the might of the alien invaders? As Dr. Rose tried to steady her thoughts, she couldn't help but think back to the warnings in the ancient text. The architects had faced a similar enemy, and they had left behind clues, but those clues were buried deep within Earth's history. The time for waiting was over. The world was now in the grip of something far greater than anything humanity had ever encountered. The Tribunal had struck, and it was only a matter of time before they would deliver their next blow. The governments of the world began to react. Military leaders held urgent meetings, and plans were hastily formed to defend the planet. But as they stared up at the Tribunal's ships, there was a growing sense of helplessness. Earth's weapons were primitive compared to the advanced technology of the invaders. The force field that surrounded the alien ships seemed impenetrable, and their weapons could level entire cities with ease. Humanity's only hope lay in the hands of those who understood the ancient clues, but even that was no guarantee. As the days passed, reports from around the world indicated that the Tribunal's ships had not moved, but their influence had grown stronger. The cities that had been struck remained in ruins, a haunting reminder of the power the aliens wielded. The skies above were filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the sounds of military jets scrambling to intercept any possible attack. But there was nothing to intercept, nothing except the looming presence of the Tribunal's fleet, watching and waiting. Back in the underground research facilities, Dr. Rose and her team worked around the clock, determined to uncover the hidden knowledge that could change the course of the war. Each discovery, each breakthrough, brought them closer to understanding the architect's intentions. But even as they pieced together the clues, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were too late. The first blow had been delivered, and the Tribunal was waiting for humanity to respond. What would happen next? Would Earth be able to withstand the full force of the Tribunal's judgment, or would humanity fall beneath the weight of an unstoppable enemy? As the world held its breath, one question remained. Could humanity find the answers in time, or would the Tribunal's first strike be the beginning of the end? The quiet hum of the command center was broken only by the soft tapping of keyboards and the occasional murmur of urgent conversations. For weeks, humanity had been reeling from the first strike by the Tribunal's fleet, and now, despite the devastation, the world found itself at a crossroads. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a cold determination to fight back. But there was an unsettling truth that loomed over every decision, every conversation, and every plan made by Earth's leaders. They had underestimated the enemy. General Marcus Ward, commander of Earth's United Defense Forces, sat at the head of the table, his face hardened by the weight of the situation. The battle had been taken to the front lines, but in many ways it was already lost. The Tribunal's weaponry was too advanced, their strategies too perfect. They had expected resistance, of course, but not to this scale. No one had thought that humanity would survive the first blow, let alone rise up against the invaders. The reality was clearer than ever. Earth was not the mighty force it once believed itself to be. Now, the full consequences of underestimating the Tribunal were about to become painfully clear. In the aftermath of the initial strike, there had been confusion and panic, but also an undercurrent of disbelief. Leaders of the world had thought, at best, that the Tribunal might invade, crush a few key cities, and then begin negotiations. They had never imagined that the Tribunal's first strike would be so decisive. The cities left in ruin, the air filled with the sound of distant explosions, and the sky darkened by the looming presence of the enemy fleet made it clear there would be no negotiations. Humanity was at the mercy of these alien invaders, who seemed to have calculated everything with terrifying precision. General Ward had been one of the first to realize that this war was different. The enemies they faced were not motivated by greed or desire for resources. They had no need for Earth's wealth or its land. The Tribunal's purpose, he had come to understand, was something far more complex. This was a test. Humanity was being judged, and every moment spent underestimating their opponents would only make the situation worse. And yet, despite this realization, the world continued to stumble, caught in the shock and awe of their enemy's power. As Ward sat in the command center, staring at the holographic display showing the status of Earth's defenses. The situation seemed hopeless. The weapons humanity had relied on for decades were useless against the Tribunal's shields, and their armies were scattered, disoriented, struggling to hold on to what little ground they had left. The enemy fleet remained suspended in the sky, unmoving, almost as if it were observing the planet below. There had been no second strike yet. It was a chilling silence that permeated every corner of Earth, leaving everyone wondering when the next blow would come and whether they would survive it. Meanwhile, in a small underground bunker in the middle of what was once Canada, Dr. Elena Cruz, a leading scientist specializing in advanced energy systems, sat hunched over her terminal, analyzing the data that had been gathered in the aftermath of the first strike. She had been one of the few who had recognized the potential for something more than mere destruction in the Tribunal's weapons. The energy signature from the first blast had been unlike anything seen before. It wasn't just powerful, it was almost controlled. Precise. The weapon wasn't merely a tool of war, it was a message. As she scrolled through the findings, Dr. Cruz's mind raced. She had long believed that humanity's biggest mistake was its arrogance, its belief that no other species could possibly surpass Earth's technological advancements. The first strike had shattered that arrogance in an instant. But even more troubling was the fact that the Tribunal hadn't just destroyed, they had provoked. Dr. Cruz's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, urgent communication. A new wave of energy readings had been detected this time, coming from the Tribunal's flagship. The readings were intense, indicating that another strike was imminent. But what startled her most was the trajectory. This was no random attack. The energy burst was aimed directly at a military base that had been evacuated just days earlier. The Tribunal wasn't just targeting cities or military strongholds, they were deliberately attacking what remained of humanity's spirit. This was a war of attrition, not just of weapons. She quickly compiled the data and sent it to the highest authorities, knowing that time was running out. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Earth had already crossed a point of no return. The price of underestimating the Tribunal was about to be paid in full, and there might be nothing left to salvage. Humanity had made the fatal mistake of thinking they could survive through sheer will alone. But survival wasn't enough. To win against the Tribunal, they would have to evolve rapidly, and in ways they had never imagined. As the days passed, the world struggled to find its footing. Countries scrambled to regroup, but nothing seemed to work. The world's military leaders had no idea what to do next. The Tribunal's weapons were too powerful, their strategy too flawless. It wasn't just their technology, it was their discipline, their patience. They waited, observing, calculating, as Earth's forces floundered. The more the humans fought back, the more they were crushed. The Tribunal had not come to destroy, they had come to test, to measure humanity's worth. The price of their underestimation was unfolding in front of their eyes. The second strike came without warning, hitting the base Dr. Cruz had warned about. The blast was larger, more intense, and this time, it was not just a physical attack, it was psychological. The entire region was blacked out, communication lines severed, and a wave of panic swept across the globe. Earth's leadership struggled to rally the populace, but the damage had been done. The Tribunal wasn't just fighting, they were reshaping humanity's very understanding of warfare. This was no longer a battle for territory. It was a battle for humanity's place in the galaxy. With each passing day, Earth's hope dwindled. The strikes from the Tribunal's ships were becoming more precise, and the world began to wonder if there was anything left to defend. Could humanity find a way to turn the tide? Would they be able to adapt and overcome the monumental odds stacked against them, or would the price of their underestimation cost them everything? General Ward, Dr. Cruz, and the rest of humanity's leaders knew one thing for sure: their survival depended on something far more than advanced technology. It depended on understanding their enemy, on accepting the hard truth that they were not the dominant force in the universe. And until they did, the Tribunal would continue to test them, striking relentlessly until they were either broken or forced to evolve. The world had never felt so still. The faint hum of technology, once a constant background noise, had fallen silent. The streets were eerily empty, save for the occasional figure moving quickly, eyes darting around in fear, as if they could sense the inevitable looming closer with every passing moment. The days following the first strike from the Tribunal had been filled with chaos, panic, and an undercurrent of disbelief. People had tried to fight back, rallying behind the hope that they could overcome the alien invaders. But now, the silence was the loudest thing of all. Humanity's future hung by a fragile thread, and the last few hours felt like an eternity. General Marcus Ward stood in the now deserted command center, his hands clenched tightly behind his back, watching the flickering screen that showed the Tribunal fleet overhead, unmoving. No new attacks had come. It was as if they were waiting for something, waiting for humanity to make the final, fateful mistake. Ward had never thought the world would end like this. He had always imagined a heroic last stand, the forces of Earth fighting valiantly against an overwhelming enemy. But this was something different. The Tribunal didn't need to fight. They were letting humanity destroy itself, piece by piece, by feeding on their fear, their panic, and their inability to adapt. For the first time in his military career, Ward felt helpless. He stared at the empty halls of the command center, the silence louder than any explosion. Dr. Elena Cruz, stationed far below the surface in the last of Earth's secure research facilities, felt the weight of the silence in her bones. For weeks, she had been working tirelessly, poring over data, trying to find a way to turn the tide of war. The Tribunal's technology was beyond anything Earth had ever dreamed of. But more than that, the nature of their made no sense to anyone trying to fight back. In her mind, Dr. Cruz was almost certain that the silence wasn't just because the Tribunal was waiting, it was a prelude to something far more devastating. And what they were waiting for was humanity's final attempt at resistance. It wasn't just the scientists or the generals who felt the weight of impending doom. Across the world, ordinary people tried to go about their lives as best as they could. Families huddled together in underground bunkers, hoping for some miracle. Parents tried to shield their children from the truth, telling them that everything would be all right, though even they didn't believe it. The future that had once seemed so bright now seemed as far out of reach as the stars themselves. The Tribunal's presence in the sky was a constant reminder that no matter how many times humanity had fought wars, built empires, or come back from the brink, this time was different. This time, Earth's people were not the victors. The days were now measured in agonizing silence. The calm was suffocating, and with every passing moment, the anxiety grew. What were the Tribunal waiting for? What did they want? No one knew. The rumors ran wild. Some said they were preparing a weapon so powerful that it would erase all of humanity in an instant. Others whispered that the Tribunal was simply waiting for humanity to break completely, to collapse under the weight of their own fear and desperation. But as the hours turned to days, and the silence stretched into an unbearable void, the only thing anyone could do was wait. Ward's mind raced. What had they missed? What crucial piece of the puzzle had slipped through their fingers? There had to be something, some tiny flaw in the Tribunal's plan that they could exploit. But every plan he had considered, every possibility he had thought of, seemed impossible. There were no answers coming from the research teams. No new weapons or strategies were coming in from the engineers. They were out of time. And yet, somewhere deep within him, a small spark of defiance flickered. He knew humanity could survive this. It had to. But how? The final transmission came through in the early hours of the morning, its source unidentified. Ward had seen a lot in his time, but this was different. The message wasn't a plea or a command. It was a simple statement, delivered in a voice that was calm and distant, like a final word before the end. "You won't survive what comes next," it said. There was no anger in the voice. No threat. It was just an observation, a fact. Humanity had lost before they even realized they were in the game. The Tribunal had calculated everything, every movement, every moment leading to this point, and now all that was left was for Earth to face the consequences of its underestimation. It was like a death sentence without ceremony, and the weight of it felt crushing. The silence after those words hung in the air for what seemed like an eternity. No one could figure out how to respond. No military strategy. No brilliant scientist offering a solution. It was as if the Tribunal had stripped away all hope, leaving only the cold truth that humanity's fate had been sealed long before this moment. The leaders gathered in the war rooms had no words left to say. There was nothing left to do but wait for the final blow. The silence that followed the transmission was not just a lack of sound, it was the final silence before extinction. The end was inevitable. It wasn't long after that. The lights in the command center flickered once and then went dark. The power grids, already strained from the earlier attacks, finally gave way. Communication lines were severed, and the only sound that could be heard was the distant echo of explosions as distant cities fell. The Tribunal's fleet was still in the sky, unmoving, watching. But now, as the world descended into chaos, the reality of the silence began to set in. Dr. Cruz's fingers flew across her keyboard, her mind racing, but no matter what calculations she made, no new solution appeared. The more she analyzed the Tribunal's actions, the clearer it became this wasn't just a war. This was humanity's judgment, a reckoning. And the Tribunal wasn't here to negotiate. They weren't here to destroy Earth out of malice. They were here to demonstrate a harsh truth. Humanity had underestimated them, and now they would pay the price. The minutes stretched into hours, and the world waited for what would come next. The last words before the silence echoed in everyone's minds. "You won't survive what comes next." For a brief moment, It felt as though the world had already ended. The silence was deafening, filled with the weight of a million unspoken fears, regrets, and missed opportunities. But in the midst of that silence, one thing was clear: the final test had begun. And whatever came next, humanity would face it with nothing